Welcome, everyone. Okay, as you can see on the screen, my name is John Karwacki. I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Eric Van Doren. We'd like to welcome you to this free webinar on behalf of Results-Driven Leadership. You can always reach us at rdltraining.com. That's Romeo Delta Lima training.com. So we're going to ask you to hold questions. We're going to send you a thank you email after this session. It's going to have our personal email contacts as well as schedulers and a link to the course contents. So you can send us your questions that way. In today's course, we're going to introduce you to the steps to properly onboard, introduce, and set up the new employees. Those new employees, the great ones that you just hired. So it worked so hard to hire for success. Many managers do the right thing in terms of recruiting, selecting, and hiring the people, but once that new player shows up to work, that's when they drop the ball because they too often treat that new employee like someone who's been working for them for years. There's no onboarding and there's no orientation period. And I got to say, that's a huge, you can spell H-U-G-E, huge mistake, because it's essential that the new employee gets a feeling of belonging and they need to understand how they fit in. Okay, that's so important because without a plan, your employees are going to be less effective at their job, and they won't have the knowledge they need to contribute and feel like they're part of the team. And that's the kind of factors that work in to contribute to them leaving your company or thinking about leaving your company before they give the job a chance. So today's course is going to give you an introduction to give you step-by-step essentials to get the maximum output for your new employees, as well as retain them longer. Because at the end of the day, it's a ton of work and cost. Eric's going to get into that with going through the hiring process, and we want to make sure that we get those folks on board and we take advantage of that. Today's course, as I mentioned, is going to give you the step-by-step to get that maximum input. It's tried and true methods that all successful companies, okay, I'm not saying yours isn't successful, but all successful companies, I'm talking about the, per surveys, the best companies on the planet employ in their process. This is their process. We're going to share it with you today. And it doesn't matter the size of your company, the size of your team, or what industry that you participate in. These are tried and true methods, and they're going to work. And once you learn them, you want to make sure that you and all the managers in your organization employ those. Because at the end of the day, the old saying, you got one chance to make a great first impression. Don't squander years because you worked really hard to hire these great new people. So let's onboard them in style. Yeah. Thanks, Eric. Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm John Karwacki, and people usually call me JK. I got 40 years experience in executive experience in the banking and retail industries. And I know when I tell you today that the steps that we're going to cover, they work. They actually work because I've done it the wrong way, okay? And I've done it the right way. And Eric and I actually worked together for a long time, and I'm sure he can attest as well, that these really do work because they're real world. It's not stuff that we learned in a book. It's stuff that some of it we were trained on, but we've done it and we've used these steps, and I can tell you they work. And it's when we go through them, you'll probably say that makes sense, and it's common sense, but it's stuff that we've lived. So, Eric, why don't you talk about yourself a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. That's tried and true. Tried and true. My name is Eric Van Doren. I'm one of the result-driven leadership team here, and I'm excited always to be here in front of folks. I've been working over 30 years with the company I just retired from, which is also PVH Corp, retail. I also dabbled in construction, operations manager for 1 year. And also before that, I actually made shoes for a living as a manufacturer for my whole life, before I got into this piece, but a family-run business, and did a little bit on my own as well. So I've had some stuff with my hands, some stuff with my head, and I do talk a lot sometimes, so please listen. So that's what we got going on today.
Okay, so high impact managers employ a checklist. Listen, step one, you got to have a checklist. There's way too many critical items to cover. If you're not organized and planned out and have these things listed, you're going to have problems, I guarantee. So you got to have this tool. Now, fortunately, if you don't have one, if you don't have a checklist, we do offer them from RDL Training. It's in the download section of this course. And We'll share a little bit more about that in a minute. But the cool thing is you can download it, you customize it to your organization. It's editable. It's a valuable tool, and it'll get you started so that you can start your people on day one with being successful. But the important thing is it's got to be clear checklist that's defined, easily followed, and prepared in advance. Can't tell you enough about that. But this is one of those best practices that the best companies, the companies that Eric and I have worked with over the years, we've used these. And we've introduced this to several of our clients at RDL Training in our training program about setting employees up for success. And they rave about this tool. They can't say enough good things about it because it really helps them to increase the contributions of those associates quicker and retain them. Speaking of retaining people, Eric, I know you've got some thoughts on that.
I'll tell you right now, training and retaining is really the most important piece. I love to say this person's name, and I used to just kill it, but it's Goethe, right? The German writer and philosopher. Once said, a great person attracts great people and knows how to hold them together. It's really about retaining them. So the idea behind that is if you hire great people and you're a great person, you're going to continue to be able to retain them throughout the tenure because people want to be around great folks. So again, attracting and retaining the right people is critical element of success. I think the piece I always say to myself, I grew up, my mom is still my biggest fan, and I'm her biggest fan. And she always says, you are who your friends are, is one of the greatest lines she has. And it's very similar to this piece right here. You hire great people, you're a great person, you're going to have great people with you. You just got to make sure you keep them and retain them is the piece that needs to happen. And we're going to show you how to do that in the next slide, in the next few slides. So as John mentioned about setting a standard for all new employees or rehires as well, a clear, concise checklist driven. Again, John says we have it. We do have it. I've used it in our clients last 3 or 4 months. I've used it twice in our updating, and the light bulb moments come on every single time for them. You'll miss stuff to cover if you do not follow the checklist, and it's a game changer. I've seen it even in our previous lives at PVH. We constructed many of those things, but this is actually this 14-step piece that we're going to be going through. It's comprehensive, and you don't want to have pain. I promise you, pain is the worst part when you do one of them or 2 of them or 4 of them. You really need to do all 14 of them, because if not, no checklist, no method, no retention, it's going to be turnover. That's just the way it is. And you'll keep on repeating it. For numbers, I'm not a stat guy, but I have one stat for you. It's important. It's the pocketbook. Over $8,425 per employee. That's for hiring, recruiting, and onboarding if you continue to turn over those folks. And anybody that I won't say likes money, but needs money, which we all do. We live, right? Make sure to stop doing that. So the first day, as John mentioned, the most important day of any new employee. So let me take you through this onboarding piece. That's Mr. Miyagi. We all know him from Karate Kid. But really, what is onboarding? I think there's a question out there. People go, what is onboarding? What does it mean? Does it mean pre-boarding? Like I have a thing for we used to travel a lot, but pre-boarding, is it onboarding a new associate? Is it training the new associate? Is it transition into the new position of the associate? Listen, I think the idea is the most important piece is that we are all human, which is good. AI is coming around the corner, but we are still human, and we need to be human. It's a human factor that when new people start, we like to call it, it might sound like a big name here, but organizational socialization. I know, organizational socialization, easy for me to say. It really creates the culture of being human and inviting somebody into your company. In other words, the systems we use to turn outsiders into productive insiders. Today, we're going to look at the critical issue of setting new team members up for success. Specifically, we will be looking at some things in our results-driven managers to build a good onboarding system, which we have. And I have to talk about Mr. Miyagi here because I think this kind of coincides. I love this saying. I say it all the time. No such thing as a bad student, only bad teacher. So if you are a bad teacher right now, if you use these steps, I promise you'll be a good teacher and have good students. So make sure you go ahead. And that's my rule of thumb is Mr. Miyagi. Again, I love him. So wanted to make sure everyone knows Mr. Miyagi again. And the next piece is number 1 for John will take you through.
So let's talk about the first day. And Eric touched on it already. And I had a boss who used to tell me, he said, listen, John, the most important day of a new employee is the first day they work with you. Okay. And it's so true because that's the day you get that first impression. So the thing is, don't wait till the last minute to plan it. Proper planning likely takes place around 2 weeks before this person even sets foot in your door. So start planning, as Eric mentioned, their socialization, their training, their workplace, things like having logins and paper supplies in their desk. Make sure you have their workstation all set up. How many times have you seen a new employee, regardless of the position, stuck in the corner sitting at some desk because nobody bothered to prepare for them, or they show up and nobody knows who they are? These negative first impressions can really taint somebody's feeling about your company, the desire to stay with you. So just as it is when you meet a person, you get one chance to make that first great impression. Make sure that these new hires that you worked so hard to hire get that great first impression of your organization. Start planning the meetings, the people they're going to meet with ahead of time. Plan on the first day to take them around, show them the facility, visit other managers, visit other departments, visit the president of the company or the owner. Again, you're going to want to make sure ahead of time that they know about this, but have all this scheduled, have it communicated to people. And what's the other thing you want to think about? What's the best day of the week to start a new employee? Wow. A lot of results-driven managers never, ever start an employee on a Monday or a Friday. Think about it. People say you don't want to buy a car that was made on a Monday or a Friday. Monday is people are just getting back from the weekend. They're getting caught up. Your employees are all busy. They're not, if they're interacting with this associate, they're not going to have time to really give them their attention, undivided attention. If it's a Friday, listen, it's the last day of the week. Some people are already checked out mentally, but the other thing is that the new person's not going to have a lot of time to get oriented and to be able to go through a lot of those things. So be really cognizant of that ahead of time. Make sure that start day is planned and communicated and there's clear objectives, and that everything that you and that new employee need is ready in place. In particular, a new employee's workstation, it ought to be all set up and ready to go. They should have a place that they can go and call home because you want them to feel welcome. You want them to feel at home. You want to create this positive first impression. And by using a checklist and some thoughtful planning, you can easily accomplish that. At the end of the day, you want to make them feel special, okay, that they've been planned for and that whole day is revolving around them. Because I don't know, Eric mentioned the $8,000. That's a lot of money. But think about this. I don't know anybody, unless you're like an HR person, who really enjoys having to recruit and interview and go through all that process while you have an opening going on. So when you hire someone and you're excited about them, let's set them up to be successful. Let's set them up to feel welcome and want to stay there forever. And again, you can do this by being prepared.
Yeah. Roll the red carpet, right, John? Roll the red carpet out.
Absolutely.
Super important. One first day.
Make them feel like a rock star.
Absolutely. The second piece of our 14 elements of high impact onboarding is providing clarity about expectations. Again, if you don't do it, you don't say this is exactly what you're going to do today. This is what we're going to do this week. This is what we're going to do next month. This is what we're going to do in 90 days, 6 months. Listen, you're going to fail. It's plain and day. You're going to fail about that. It allows you to have meaningful conversation. The new employee knows exactly what they're going through. You know exactly what you're going through. And in fact, the organization knows what's going on from socialization aspects. So clarity about the expectations so they know where they stand at all times. I call it roadmap. I call it a roadmap because it's easy for me and I drive all the time and the Waze thing. So I always know where I'm going, where I am, where the police officers on the side of the road for me. It allows you to go, oh, okay, I better slow down. So this checklist is your roadmap, and you really have to follow it. No shortcuts. Everyone uses the same roadmap. You can obviously add in some of your own pieces to your own organization, which is pretty simple, but it's pretty much covered, is what I've noticed. And oh, by the way, I forgot about the work-life balance. My gosh, hello. I think the other also aspect is allowing folks to know that the work-life balance does matter in this aspect. So knowing exactly where terms are, oh, shoot, sorry.
Jumping ahead there, partner.
I had happy trigger finger there. But the work-life balance is extraordinarily important. So they know exactly what the company's about and where we're going with all that. So this is the next piece, which is number 3, reviewing the employee job descriptions.
Yeah. As Eric mentioned, great employers provide a lot of clarity and specificity around what's expected by the employee. Anybody who's joining your company, they want to do good. Otherwise, they wouldn't be with you. But it's up to you, the manager, to describe what good looks like. You need to prepare. You need to be able to describe and really go into detail about what good looks like. And the best tool, the very best tool for that is the job description. One of the top reasons employees leave a boss, and remember, they join a company, but they leave a boss, okay? The number one reason for leaving is their boss did not give them specific, clear direction on what's expected. And I gotta tell you, you don't want to be that boss, especially now since you put in all this time hiring these great people. So make sure what's expected, what you expect, and what good looks like is crystal clear to these guys. So there's no misunderstanding. The more uncertain employees are about their job and their responsibilities, the more likely it is that you're not going to retain them. It's as simple as that. It's a direct proportional relationship.
Yep.
If they aren't sure about what they're doing and what you expect of them, they're going to leave you. And the best way to reduce those unknowns is a clearly written job description.
Yeah.
A clearly written job description details what their job is and what it is not. Okay. So you want to make sure that your people are so clear on that. And if your job description, if it doesn't match what you're asking them to do, it's going to cause frustration. Again, it's another one of those elements that starts festering and you're going to end up losing people. So you want to make sure these things are really clear. In keeping that, you want to periodically check the job description. You want to make sure that, because jobs evolve, we ask people to do things and they change with technology, with changes in the business, and they change. So periodically, you're going to want to sit down and tweak that job description, or actually rewrite it, but tweak it. And my recommendation to you is you should grab that person who's already in the job and have them do it in conjunction with you, because you want them to have a sense of ownership with what they're being asked to do, as well as who better knows the job than the person who's actually performing it. Think of the sense of engagement. Think of the partnership that you're creating with that person, not to mention to make your job a little bit easier because you don't have to get into all the nuts and bolts. But again, it's going to elevate them. It's going to make them feel important. It's going to make them feel part of the process, and they're going to have ownership and engagement, which again is one of those big reasons people end up leaving companies. So have them do that. And just at the end of the day, clarity, I can't stress it enough. You want to be really clear about your expectations and what the expectations of your employees are, because that's the number one reason people end up leaving bosses. So,
yep.
I
agree. I think there's a piece there when you have that joining in aspect, John, especially millennials, Gen Zs, they want to feel part of the process. They need to be included. It's extraordinarily important on their aspect to be included with that, for sure.
Everybody wants to have a feel like they're directing their life a little bit. They don't always be told what to do. So I think that if they have a feeling that it's their job and they've created it, then I think they'll feel a lot more ownership.
I agree. Now, our fourth one, reviewing your functional organizational chart or org chart. This is one that we had firsthand many a times in our company with how big our company was, 10,000 plus. We would always run in people that we did not know. And I know we tried to do our firsthand in the field to make sure we had a thing called people to know. aspects where you'd have to know when someone came into a job site or whatever, they would know who they were as a picture and a small little snippet of what they did. But it's really you have to understand when you show these guys the new job, the org chart, that they know exactly what the primary focus of these people do of each group, and then who they are. Their pictures is always nice to have, and also how they work in conjunction with each other. I think that's an extremely important aspect. And I think this one's lost a lot in many companies that we've been working in with. We've had a couple of input from them. They say, I don't know who that person is. And I'm like, oh, you don't? They're this person. They're the HR. They're this person. And it is surprises to me when we go through our checklist, we'll show you later, that they actually don't know them. And they've been there for 6 months. Listen, this is an aspect of really quick in the first week or the first month, you got to be able to touch everybody. So this is the piece that we need to make sure that everyone knows the org chart and everyone knows who works there. It's uber important.
Eric, the other thing that you mentioned was that people understand the job functions, because a lot of times our job functions are interconnected with another department.
Yeah.
And you might need a resource, a report, product, materials from another person in the company, and understanding where you get those. Where do you get office supplies from? And who's the person if I need a new printer cartridge? Who do I get it from? All those things are super important. So understanding that, as well as what does your job function, how does that impact the next people down the line? And again, it just makes it all, you have a better understanding of the big picture. All right, so more of the things that you got to really cover. Okay, one of the biggest complaints of CEOs, executives, and managers is employees not showing up to work. Okay, oh my God. Hey, listen, I strongly recommend that one of your first discussions when you're onboarding your new person is to let them know what the expectations are. And think about it this way, describing what on time looks like. Okay, so we get to work at 8 o'clock, right? So what does 8 o'clock really mean? Does it mean you arrive at 8 o'clock, go down the hall, get a cup of coffee, chit chat for a while by the water cooler, go grab some breakfast, get to your desk, I don't know, 8:30, 8:45, and then start checking email? I don't know. Maybe that's what it is. Or does it mean that you're ready and sitting at your workstation, having had breakfast and chit-chatted and your coffee at 8 o'clock? It really makes a big difference, because if you think about it, if you bring a new person in, and you can't assume that they know this, but if you have experienced people, and if the expectation is 8 o'clock, you're doing work, because guess what? My work depends on you getting me this report by 8:15, so it better be started at 8. Mm-hmm. If they see this person out there chit-chatting and just lollygagging around the office, it's going to really not be great for morale. Certainly for things getting done, it's going to be disruption to the workplace, and you're not going to have things. So you have to make sure that you explain what on time means for you. And again, it's funny, because Eric and I worked at a place, you mentioned the company we worked for, and we would often go to the corporate office, and we'd be in there because we had to get things done and get work and get moving. And there's this one associate, and he was a supervisor. And this guy, I swear, he would spend the first hour of the day just walking around. He'd plop himself in your office and start yakking away about what his kids were doing at school and what the planning board was doing. I'm not making this up, Eric.
You're not.
It was so disruptive. And I just wanted to say, get out of here. Yeah. So again, I think the expectations, they need to be crystal clear with everybody to make sure that you have people aren't confused about what's going on. Now, the other thing too is I want to say that you might want to also have a conversation with this person too. If there are times in the year where they might have to be expected to work whatever hours are necessary to get the job done, whether it's evenings or weekends. I mean, just think about this. If you're in an accounting firm, what it looks like in March or the beginning of April, I think April 15th is the deadline to file taxes. So those folks, and I know from experience, I didn't work in one, but I can call up my accountant on a Saturday afternoon. He's working on the weekend, sometimes on a Sunday. So that's the expectation. So you want to make sure if your business has those sorts of expectations at times, that you're up front with that and very clear about it, so people don't resent it when you do ask them. And certainly, I would guess in most situations, we'd have an agreement of getting extra time off for doing that. The other thing too is if your people are working those hours and you don't need them to, and they're not really necessary, that's been the expectation, but it's not needed, probably should let them know that they don't need to do that, so that they're not feeling like they're being taken advantage of.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, you want to be really clear about work hours. I think we're going back to this whole concept of clarity, really clear about late hours, seasonality, weekends, being upfront about what on time means. Avoid the confusion, the possible embarrassment on any of these topics, and avoid skipping that conversation, because again, we might think somebody's experienced and they've got a great resume. We talked about that in other courses, but they've got this great resume, but don't assume they know what on time means in your organization, because again, it's your culture and you got to make sure that they're acclimating and feel like they're part of it, and it doesn't disrupt people who are already there.
Amen.
Don't be like that guy. Also, assigning a mentor. This is one thing, and you can call it a buddy, whichever you're more comfortable with. A lot of companies think about this because they haven't done it in the past, but it makes so much sense. From the standpoint of, if you assign a mentor, you're going to want to pick one of your most positive people that represent you in your department or your company the best. But think of it's a great delegation step for you. I think that's a great thing to be thinking about, taking something off of your plate, which is so important. And again, you're putting it on this other person's plate. But the other thing is, when you give a mentor to a new employee, it gives them somebody who's another employee to go to whether there's a problem. Because face it, is the boss, you're probably the last person. I know I was always the last one that someone's going to go to ask a question, especially if they think it's a dumb question. But even think about this. I need to know where I need to put my lunch bag, or I can't log on to my computer, or where can I put my coat on a rainy day, and things like that. It seems like they're really stupid. Parking, and how does that work, and how do lunch breaks work? All of those things, they're a lot more likely to go to another employee than to the boss. Okay, that's just human nature. So that's a great thing. And then the other side benefit, just think about this. Think about what it does to the self-esteem and the standing of the mentor themselves. Okay, because you're selecting them as being a representative for you in the company, but also being the best and the brightest, all those sorts of things. So again, that's going to elevate them in their eyes, but also in the eyes of their peers, because everyone's going to look at them as being, this person's really cool. So you're designating the soft spot for people to go to, the new employees to go to. You're setting up a natural relationship where the mentor takes them under their wing, and it really creates this sense of belonging and acceptance for the new person, which is one of those keys to longevity for your new employee and for your mentor as well, because they're going to be growing. Now, also, if you do select somebody for a mentorship, you might want to, if it's an hourly employee, maybe you do it for 3 months, 6 months. If it's a management person, maybe it's even up to a year. So you can play that by ear. But I would also consider getting some kind of a monetary bonus, especially if the person works in a commissioned industry, because that might be taking time from them from the sales floor or whatever they do themselves. Or in terms of the company that Eric and I worked for, we had a peer mentor program. It was a formalized program. It was a rather large company. And these people would be, because of the size of the company, they'd be handling probably 5 or 6 people a year. Right. So that we gave these salary associates, we gave them a small salary bump. Now, we didn't give them necessarily a real title change, but we gave them a little salary bump, and they were known as this. And it was a huge win for us, because again, it took that off of our plates, and we had this program to bring people on board and onboard them successfully, but it also elevated them in the eyes of everyone else. The other thing too, I just want to say, if you designate someone and ask them to be a mentor, you probably want to pull them aside to inform them of exactly what's going to be expected of them in this role, and if there's any training involved. But again, to be able to give the mentor themselves the expectations of what you'd like to have accomplished through this program. We think it's a great idea. If you're not employing that already, really consider it, because we've done it in the past with it and without it, and it's a huge win. And again, even if there's a small cost to it, it pales by comparison to having to rehire people and go through that. So well worth it.
You could tell how passionate John is about this, as you probably noticed.
I am.
He is. He and I have been through this a long time. And who doesn't want to be a mentor? It feels good. A lot of on our DISC profile, a lot of the high S's are great mentors.
Yeah.
Because those folks can listen pretty much better than anybody else and teach and are the most friendly. On our next aspect, which is number 7, magic 7 here of our 14 elements, long-term employees sharing a meal with a new employee. I'll keep it really simple here. What it really is having a chance to meet and greet, a cup of coffee. If you're online, it's hard to have a meal with each other. John and I do it sometimes online, but usually a cup of coffee, have a discussion, or before a Zoom call that you guys have in a meeting. So also come 10 minutes early. Let's jump on and have some small discussion of what's going on. I want you to meet somebody here is always a great aspect. Also, as an employer, nothing wrong with getting a pizza or something together and put together into an organization where everyone greets and meets that new employee at one time per department is also a nice way to get things done a little bit more speedily, I guess, is that's the word. So listen, also have a well-respected person, as John mentioned, someone who really represents you to be able to guide these people through the mentor piece. It is so important because they have the time, sometimes more than you, to do these things.
Yeah. And the other two is you want to make sure you schedule these luncheons with the people, the employees who are there already, who are going to be asked to take them to lunch, as well as let the new person know their schedule the first week, if that's scheduled. And think about this too. If you're you're the newbie and you don't know any, it sure beats going to the lunchroom by yourself or sitting at your desk eating by yourself because you don't know anyone. So it's a great way to get brought into the fold because you want them to feel welcomed.
Yeah, you don't want to be the kid at school, the first day of school, you don't know anybody. So that's the aspect, like John was a couple of times, which we had discussions off air. The number 8 here, John.
All right, so you're going to want to train your current employees on how to help out with this. You got to make it clear. If nothing else is clear, I like clarity. What you expect from the current workforce when you're bringing a new person on board. So set up a training session with your existing employees to number one, highlight how important it is that we make the right impression on this new employee, but how they should interact. You should train your reports, and this may sound a little silly, but on even basic relationship techniques like employing good eye contact. Give them a friendly handshake. Properly introduce people as you're taking them around to other employees in the office or the workplace. Active listening, giving them feedback. And I can't stress above all, patience with the new person, because they're going to be a little slower at doing things, especially if you have this group that's tenured. And also be cognizant, if there's long-term employees that may resent a new person, and I call them the negative Nellies out there, you want to make it clear to them what to do and what not to do and what not to say to that new employee on their first week of the job. You want to make sure that we're setting everything up to be as successful as possible and welcoming this new person on board, because at the end of the day, we don't want to keep going through the merry-go-round of hiring people, and onboarding ends up being one of the most critical factors in whether someone stays with you and how well you do that.
No doubt. And number 9, introductions of new employees by their direct report. Now, this is where, as you're the boss here, walking folks around into the org chart that you have in front of you, and you know where to go, and it allows you to, I'll call it back to school work, I guess, because I have a couple of teenage girls, but it's really show and tell. The idea is that you're showing off your new talent here. You're saying, hey, listen, I've got this great employee. I want you to meet them. This is what they do in their section of the business. And it allows everyone to understand who they are, meet and greet. Again, the scheduling piece is one of those more of a broad piece for this is, hey, I'm going to take people around today. I'm going to stop into your office real quick. We'll wave at you and we'll say hi. If you have a moment to say something, great. But the idea is just to see a name, a face, and this is my new person. So when they see people walking down the aisle or on a Zoom call, that they understand who this person is. And it's not something where you have 6 months later and you say, who is that person? And that happens more than you would think. So we're going to make sure that the new employees understand that they understand everyone in the building is super important. Next one.
All right, so knowing the vision, the mission, the culture of the organization, it's going to give a new employee the feeling of being part of something bigger than themselves. Okay, something bigger and broader than just the work team and what they do on a daily basis. In a process, it should feel like they're contributing to an organization that's going to be part of their future and does good in the world. Especially for your millennials and your Gen Z employees, they want to work for a company that is as much for good as much as it is for profit. Okay, so think about for good as much as they are for profit. So set aside some time in the first week or so of your employees' life with you to discuss the long-term vision of the company. Have them read the organization's mission statement. You can ask them some probing questions, appropriate questions to determine understanding. And also feel free to share some of your own personal stories that support that mission. It's so important to a lot of especially the younger folks nowadays, but every organization should have a clear and current mission statement. And I'm just going to say, if you don't have one, you better get one. Okay, because it's really, and again, if you don't have one and communicate, that could be why you're having a hard time attracting people. So do that. If you don't have one and you're having trouble with it, that's something we can help. Eric and I, we could help with that. In RDL training, we certainly specialize in that. So really important to make sure your new people get that mission statement in hand and understand that.
Bravo. Love that. Now, here's an aspect I love. Number 11, reviewing written protocols, processes, and procedures. I say I love it because I'm a high I, and sometimes rules are rules. I know rules, but I'm not sure I'm going to follow them all the time. But that's just me being a high I. Very creative fella. So with this written protocols, you need to have some sort of a handbook, right? A handbook that allows you to, everyone's on the same page. This is the rules and regulations of what we do in a company. This is the policies and procedures, code of conduct that you'll have and actually sign probably once a year is always a good component. I know we did this forever. It allows you to know as a company where you stand and what your company is all about. I loved it. The book was obviously a little too thick for me, but I did gander it after a number of years. I did get through it for me. The personal conduct rules also is that same piece of code of conduct. Who can you bring their phone around at work or meetings, and what are the rules on those pieces? There's a lot of details that are involved in your handbook. Dress code could be an aspect as well, because sometimes you can come in pretty raggedy, or you could be dressed in bow ties like John and I used to do at work for a long time. So this is a piece. Review written protocols and processes. To the next piece, John.
Well, I got all the tough ones. So reviewing the harassment policy. Wow.
Just follow it.
I gotta say, harassment is one of those problems that rears its ugly head whenever you least suspect it. Because who's expecting that, right? From new people, you're not expecting to harass people. But unless you establish early on a zero tolerance policy from the onset, you could find yourself and your organization facing minimally a major disruption, a disruption to your business, possibly having to discipline or discharge an employee or employees, loss of prestige for your company as an employer, and worse yet, possible costly legal fees and settlement fees. We've seen this stuff over the years, and never a good thing. Harassment too, it's any unwelcome conduct that's based on race, color, religion, sex, and that could be sexual orientation, gender identity, pregnancy, national origin, age, disabilities. I've even said genetic background.
Yeah.
Once again, it's always the lowest common denominator, so you've got to be really intolerant of any of that. So I strongly suggest, as one of those first discussions you have, is to set the bar as you're onboarding your new employee. In also consider this is a great time to review your harassment policy with existing people as well, because again, I think that's something a lot of major corporations do that annually. I would recommend that you consider having a refresher for all employees when that new person starts minimally. At the end of the day, there's no place for harassment in a modern workplace, just none. And zero tolerance needs to be established as one of the core principles for your organization's culture. So again, it's one of those things, if you need help with that, number one, if you have an HR department, I would contact them. If you have a policy in place, take a look at your policy. And you might even want to take a look at and see if from your perspective, it needs to be updated, because a lot of those laws changed. And once again, we're available at RDL training to help with that sort of thing. But harassment, zero tolerance, and it's pretty black and white.
Yeah, protect yourself. That's the best way to put it. Protect
and
yourself,
your
get your people trained. All right, reviewing the policy about regularly scheduled reviews. Okay, write this down. It has to be consistent. No matter what it is, consistent. Everyone needs to know when this happens. A lot of companies do it yearly, is really the standard, which really was more of a turn of the century 1999 deal. Nowadays, it really should be monthly. We believe at RDL is to do it monthly. It is so important to have a conversation with your employee, at least minimum of 30 minutes. Again, it could be a little less. And I say, I don't have time for this stuff. You have to have time for this stuff. You have to give them regular feedback. You have to have conversation. You have to have a dialogue, not a monologue, a dialogue between each other. Feedback goes both ways. It can actually help you as well. You can cover your goals, your company goals, your personal goals, your mission statements, how things are going, what new ideas do you have in departments, but once a month, 30 minutes. And eventually, when you do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, you'll see a turn where the employee will start to come to you and say, hey, we got our monthly meeting. And you have to schedule it. Obviously, it's really simple to schedule. Don't push it to the next month. Do it every month. It is so important if you're going to cover and hang on with Gen Zs. We've stories, people leaving on a dime. Millennials, that was 10 years ago. Same type of aspect. They have to be and understand where they stand in the company always and where they are going.
Yeah, the cool thing is if you do that often, those conversations will end up being 5 or 10 minutes. So
yeah, and it really does work. The monthly piece is without a doubt the most efficient for you and for them.
All right, so discussing department team goals. In most workplace environments, many of the tasks are performed by team or department structure. So you want to develop an atmosphere that fosters commitment to your organization's mission. And that's from your supervisors to your team members and that new employee. You want them to know how that will benefit them. So one way of doing that is by creating and sharing a department or team mission statement. So think about this, bringing it down to a micro level. So from macro down to micro, but then have it come into life by introducing the new employee and the team members so they can discuss the mission with you, and that maybe even help you write it. Okay, so think about that sense of engagement, but you can establish key performance metrics. So how are we going to measure our progress? You can review that progress weekly in your team meetings. And that's something, if you're not doing that already, you might want to consider having weekly meetings just to keep everything on point. And then you can help have the team involved in helping direct activities, course correct if things aren't working out the way we want them to, but help them to participate in shaping the outcomes so that they're not just, again, to Eric's point earlier, just being told how to do things. They're being participative in that outcome being shaped. It's an awesome way another awesome way, if you would, to get engagement with your folks, of both your new and existing team members. get everybody into the fold. It takes a lot of the pressure off of you, but again, your employees will gain a sense of ownership, a sense of being able that they're directing the ship a little bit themselves. In that whole, they own the job that way. It's really a great way to build your team and to integrate that new person on board. So you consider doing that. Those mini mission statements. I think it's a great way to build a team.
Yeah, you got to trust your smart people because you have good people. Just got to trust them.
Yeah, give them the ball.
Exactly. Tools. The next slide here is I'm going to roll through and to say the tools and exercises to determine your needs. I'm going to give you a quick flash piece of this one tool that we have quickly. Do a snapshot, and there it is. Evaluating your organization. John's going to give you a piece after this, but this form is enlightening, to be truthful. Anybody that's never done any kind of onboarding whatsoever, or you give them the keys, here you go, new sheriff in town, go for it, to the person does the checklist all the way through. It allows you to go through always and sometimes and never do we ever do this. And again, you don't have to put names on this thing. It's about you creating the new set, even or adding on to our list that's already on there. It really, for the last 2 clients we've had this, I've done 2 times this year, and the changeover on this, it was earth shattering, I guess. When a person comes up and say, I cannot believe we were never using this. It's been so much easier because it allows us to do the same thing with every employee. And you hear that we just talked about it for this last 45 minutes, but it really works. It works. So this is one of our forms that we'll be talking about. And our last thing to close this webinar, John and I love to do this. We really do. We love being around each other. You probably could tell the magic here, right, John? Magic?
Oh, absolutely.
We've worked many times in front of hundreds of people to doing our little things. Used to call Men in Blazers. We used to call it. It was one of our little skits we did for many years. And I just want to say thank you for joining. Your time is valuable to our webinar. It's super important to us for knowing that you're out there, and hopefully you can get a little inkling of what we've tried to share with you guys on setting up employees for success. We hope it was informative again. And my favorite word of all time, like I talked about earlier, my value, that it was valuable. And I think that's one of the things that we go by at RDL is it's a valuable asset. We got a couple of good minds here, Vaughn, John, myself, and by the way, we have another one come up in a couple of weeks, which is cool, May 31st. And we'll talk about how to develop your team members and the aspect after you got them on board, how to develop them. It will be Wednesday, May 31st. And of course, we call it new office hours. It's pretty much the same office hours. Pacific Standard Time, I'm in Carlsbad, California at 8 a.m. on Wednesdays, every Wednesday. And John is in Portland, Maine at 11 o'clock because he's East Coast guy, a Patriot fan. We don't want to talk about that. And then, so please tell your friends about us and colleagues, share the link. I think it's always fun. We love to make our training a party, so to speak. As you can tell, we're fun. We're fun people. So let's talk about some of the effective employee onboarding steps that we've learned today and what it means for you. So think about your things that maybe you learned out of the 14 steps. You say, I do this really well. I never even heard of that. And this piece, I don't know what they're talking about. But I promise you this, those 14 steps, you follow those, it's a game changer. So I know John has a few things to talk about at the end here.
All right. So listen, thanks, Eric. Hey, so we couldn't cover everything that's in the course. There's a whole lot more to it than could be covered in the scope of a 45-minute discussion. So what we're going to do today, because you sat in with us for our webinars, we're going to offer the entire course. It's normally priced at $97, which isn't a ton. We're going to offer it to you for $47. So it's $50 off. And it's less than half price. Plus, on top of that, we're going to offer a one-hour one-on-one coaching lesson to go over the tools if you buy them. So for $47, I'll tell you what you get. So there's videos that come with this. There is a full course manual workbook. There's a leader's guide. There's all sorts of discovery tools, including the onboard checklist, as well as the form that Eric flashed for a second there. And there's other things too to help you find out what your soft spots are in training, what your opportunities are, what you do well. And as well, we're going to offer a DISC assessment that's free. Okay. And if you don't know what DISC is, this is a really cool behavioral tool. It's something you answer. It takes 15 to 20 minutes to complete. And it'll really give you a great snapshot of yourself. I did it. And yeah, I was a little bit of a skeptic. And said, I got it back. I said, wow, I'm looking in the mirror. This is really scary. But it's a cool way to understand how you interact with folks and how you best communicate. But that comes with it. And then we're also going to give a personal development plan. Again, all for $47, because at the end of the day, we want you to succeed. We want you to be super successful bringing on and onboarding your new people. We want you to have an air of confidence when you do that. And all these tools are included to help you out, to help you get that accomplished. So don't miss out on the special offer. Hey, listen, thank you so much for joining us today. Without you, we wouldn't be here doing this. We want to wish you great success in setting your new employees up for success. You've taken the first major step for making that happen. So bravo to you, kudos. Once I mentioned earlier, if you have any questions, please, we're going to send an email out to you immediately after the session here.
Yep.
And that's going to have our personal emails on it, as well as a course link, so you can download those courses, as well as we'll answer those questions and get right back to you. Everything you need to get started, set up for setting you up your new employees for success is included in the course. And again, all for $47. So that's our special for you today. So thank you for spending part of your afternoon with us.
Thanks for your time, guys. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.